Time for your PFF wide receiver rankings for the 2019 NFL Draft, all powered by PFF Edge and Elite, where you can find your NFL Draft guide and full statistical breakdowns on all of these guys because that added context is crucial. So get your Edge or Elite package today. All right, Mike, as much discussion about the wide receivers as any other position, I think we need to start by saying scheme fit, massive. Usage, massive. It's very tough to rank these guys in a vacuum, but I guess it's our job, so we have to do it.
Yeah, these are, you look at anybody's rankings, they're going to be all over the place depending on what they value most. I mean, if you want a deep threat, if you want a route runner, if you want a slot, like there's a handful of different body types, type of receivers in this class that it depends on what you value more is going to dictate a lot of these rankings. But I will say, I like this wide receiver class. There are some quality starters to be had.
All right, let's get into the details of what makes each guy a top 15 receiver on our board. Starting with number 1, DK Metcalf, a guy that didn't necessarily grade well in our system, but his yards per route run, over 2.8, that's a fantastic number. And a lot of the grade was dependent on drops, which don't really care about that much at the next level. If you could truly stretch the field and be a mismatch weapon, that's what DK Metcalf is.
Yeah, drops and usage there at Ole Miss was left wide receiver every single play. Defense knew where he's going to be, could game plan for him. And basically, if you're a deep threat, the way DK Metcalf is, his route tree is the silo route tree. He's going to be beating you down the field or on deep comebacks. That is his bread and butter. And teams can game plan for that. But I think that still in and of itself has value to the fact that at the NFL level, with his type of speed, with his type of size, you can't expect to put a 5'10 corner who runs a 4.5 40 on him and not get him torched down the field. I just think what he brings to the table, I feel confident in that deep speed, that stuff translating to the next level.
Yeah, you got to take a corner and you got to put him way off. If this is DK, he can't play press because he'll whoop him deep. He's a souped-up version of Will Fuller, who's a legitimate deep threat for Notre Dame with some ball skills. So the fact that his 3-cone and change of direction was terrible almost doesn't even matter because you're going to get this separation and you're going to run that vertical route tree. That's DK.
And I will say, don't expect to be getting a Julio Jones or an AJ Green. That's not who he is. He's not a complete X type of wide receiver there. You're going to pump 160 targets to and get 110 catches. He might more be like 120 targets, 75 catches, but those 75 catches go for 1,400 yards because that's how good of a deep threat he is.
It reminds me of Martavis Bryant, who at his best was a legitimate guy that's getting behind the defense once or twice a game. There's a lot of value in that.
Faster, bigger, that type of version of it.
That type of version, exactly. All right, let's get into A.J. Brown, number 2, his teammate, who we think might be the most complete receiver in the draft, can win from the slot and can win on the outside.
Yeah, there is if you want a true X, he is, in my opinion, the best in this class. So if you're looking for that type of receiver, you could even switch these rankings, and that's why ranking these is so hard. But did it from the slot when DK Metcalf went down this past season, took over that role for him and averaged over 120 yards a game in that role, just playing that outside left wide receiver. Love his ball skills, love his after the catch ability. There's not a lot of knocks on A.J. Brown's game, to be honest.
And we have a first round cutoff right about here, but again, it depends on, and again, if Hakeem Butler ends up in the first round or Deebo Samuel snuck into the late first, we wouldn't argue with that necessarily. What about J.J. Arcega-Whiteside? Everybody's all over the place on him, but there's 2 things that we love about him, releases and especially contested catch skills.
Yeah, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, kind of in a similar boat to DK Metcalf. He was just that outside wide receiver at Stanford, didn't get a single screen thrown to him all season long. Basically, all his targets came about 10-plus yards downfield unless they were in the red zone. But he had the highest red zone grade of any wide receiver in this class, highest 3rd and 4th down grade of any wide receiver in this class. When they had to go to someone, they went to J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, and he led the nation.
And they would post him up. Like this. This was a legit route that they ran at Stanford, and he was successful doing it.
Could not be guarded. 7 out of 11 times they ran that.
I had to act it out.
Resulted in touchdowns. I wouldn't have been able to defend that on Steve right there because that's what he brings to the table is size, contested catchability, like I said. Led the draft class this past season. 2017 led the draft class as well. That's going to translate.
These next 2 guys, very similar to me. Andy Isabella, Marquise Brown, a little bit shorter, a little bit slighter, but incredible speed, 4.3 type of guys, even though we haven't seen Marquise Brown run.
We love deep threats, and these 2 guys are legit deep threats. Don't get too caught up in their size. Brown's is a little concerning, the fact that he's might be around 170 pounds in the Deshaun Jackson range. Not a lot of guys have been able to be successful at that, but the way he moves, the way he runs routes, I think will still translate. Great ball skills as well. Isabella, though, 188 pounds. He is solid at a little under 5'9". When he gets a step on you, when he gets just a little separation, he's gone. You're not going to make that step up. 4.31 speed, legit, showed up on tape again and again. There's a reason why he led the nation in receiving grade and receiving yards this past season at UMass. That just doesn't happen, you know?
And he tracks the ball really well down the field. You made the Brandon Cooks comp, so that's important. Brandon Cooks, more of an outside receiver.
Yes.
Think him, think T.Y. Hilton. He's not necessarily a slot. That's actually not his game. He's not that good at it, though he's good after the catch, former running back. As we get into more of our second round type of grades, and there's a big chunk of guys where we wouldn't mind taking him in the second round. Hakeem Butler, your big freak type of receiver. He's got some freakish type of plays on film as well, where he just looks like a man amongst boys.
Yeah, his ability in contested catch situations, right up there with J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. He is just going to be difficult for smaller corners to match up with. There are some worrisome things on tape when guys did get his hands on him. He just struggles to separate, get off, press coverage even at his size. His ability to get off the line of scrimmage is not that good. Has a ways to go in that regard, but you really can't teach his physical skills, his after the catch ability. I think if you get a little creative in his usage, he could be a productive receiver in your offense.
And the thing we're looking at here, he's not smooth in and out of his breaks, much like DK Metcalf, but as you said, you could press him, right? If you press DK
is better, much better at the line of scrimmage, yeah.
He could really scare you if you do that. That's why we have Butler there, still a very productive, at least possession type receiver. Deebo Samuel, fantastic route runner. He's good after the catch as well. Could play in the slot, could play on the outside. We're big fans of him. A lot of rumors about him going in the top 40.
Yeah, very similar to a guy like DJ Moore a year ago who did go in the first round. We have very similar grades on both those guys. Very good after the catch in terms of what he can do with the ball in his hands. Could even be a running back in your offense. If you really wanted to do it, I think that's how good he is. And his route running is fantastic at this point. I just worry about his ball tracking at times down the field. But if you do take him, first round type of guy, I'm not going to debate you there.
All right, the other big name I think that we're a little bit lower on than a lot of people is N'Keal Harry. Why do we have him at 8? Still like him in the second round, but a lot of people have him in the first.
Yeah, just a lot of his production came, I call it fluff production, slot outs, things where you're not actually beating coverage to get your yardage. Now, he's great after the catch. That's who he's going to be at the next level. But in terms of winning down the field, he did not do it at a rate close to anyone else above him on this list. Even some guys below him on this list were better down the field. But those very good in contested situations, great hands, great after the catch. That's the type of receiver you're getting N'Keal Harry. Don't expect a pure number one.
We were worried about separation skills, good on contested catches, but if you're not separating well enough, it's potentially an issue. Let's fly through just the quick strengths on some of these other guys. Terry McLaurin didn't have a ton of volume at Ohio State, but really crushed it at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, no one gets a ton of volume at Ohio State because of how many weapons they have in that offense, 5 to 4 wide on the field every single play. But as a deep threat, we saw it at the Senior Bowl, probably the most impressive week in the practices there in terms of how often he beat guys down the field. Legit speed, 4.35 at a little over 200 pounds there. I really like him as a deep threat, not necessarily a complete receiver, but I think he can bring some deep speed to your offense.
Riley Ridley, Calvin Ridley light, just a less athletic version of his brother who knows how to run routes, knows how to get open. I want to jump to Deontay Johnson, though, because he's a guy every time we watch him, we're like, man, we should be higher on this guy. He is a dynamic receiver as a route runner and after the catch.
Oh, man, he's probably my favorite receiver to watch in this draft class just because of how electric, how much of a home run threat he is. Every single time he touches the football, led the nation in punt return average over the past 2 seasons, had 4 return touchdowns over the past 2 years. And with the ball in his hands and even running the full route tree, he gets open. And he was not a slot. 5'10", 185 pounds, you think slot receiver. He was not. He was an outside receiver at Toledo, still as productive as anyone in the nation a couple years ago when he was top 5 nationwide in receiving grade. That was with Logan Woodside. Not as great a quarterback, left some yards on the field from this past year and had some drops, but man, Deontay he's an electric wide receiver.
All right, some 3 bigger receivers here at 12 to 14. Let's try to separate them a little bit. Kelvin Harmon from NC State, Miles Boykin, Emmanuel Hall, all guys. Again, the hype's all over the place with these guys depending on who you're listening to. Why do we have them in this range?
Yeah, Harmon is just very much limited athletically. I think what you see with him is what you get. Going to be good in contested catch situations, going to be able to separate in that intermediate range. That's going to be his bread and butter, but just getting open down the field, any sort of after the catch ability, it's not there with Kelvin Harmon. So much more of a possession type receiver.
Boykin's the opposite.
Boykin a little bit of the opposite in terms of great ball skills, fantastic athleticism, but for some reason, he just did not translate in terms of after the catch ability. Only 2 broken tackles this whole last season, despite having elite athleticism, and just the production wasn't quite there. Whereas Harmon very, very productive. So Boykin, still some projection with him, and Emmanuel Hall, terrible ball skills. I mean, he had over a 10% drop rate each of the past 2 seasons, but his explosiveness on tape, getting open down the field, might be as good as anyone in this draft class. We worry about his ball tracking and his ability to haul in those deep catches down the field, similar to someone like Torrey Smith.
Acceleration plus second gear, really special for Emmanuel Hall. So he'll get open deep, just a matter of, hey, you got to catch the ball more consistently. And the last name we have to discuss, getting first-round hype, Ohio State wide receiver Paris Campbell. We have him at number 15, mostly because he was a gimmicky type of player at Ohio State. Haven't really seen him run the wide receiver route tree all that well.
Yeah, I mean, his stats look good. 90-plus catches, over 1,000 yards there at Ohio State, in the Big Ten. He's their number 1 receiver, but not really, because 30 of those catches were screens. I think only 21 of his targets came 10-plus yards downfield. He's running
a lot of drag routes.
The fluff, as I like to call it, pretty much all fluff in terms of his yardage. Only a few deep balls that he hauled in all season long, and they were slot goes against safeties. That's just not something that, yes, that's great that he has that speed, but it's not translatable to the next level. He hasn't actually beaten coverage yet, and that's just a difficult thing to do in the NFL if you've never had to do it before.
Very awkward catching the football as well. It just looks clunky trying to catch the ball, even though he didn't have a ton of drops. It's, early in his career he did, and once they got a good role for him, he produced. So I think he just needs the right scheme. He needs the Tavon Austin type of role that they tried to create a couple years ago. So there you have it. Everybody's going to be all over the place on their wide receiver rankings, but these are ours here at PFF. Again, be sure to grab your PFF draft guide, all a part of PFF Edge and Elite.